Welcome to Season 4 of Lawyers with Game. Today we're talking with Geoffrey Frid about his experiences going from college athlete to real estate mogul working with celebrities and athletes. Join us for an exciting conversation. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lawyers with Game. I'm your host, Darius Gambino. I am first and foremost a lifelong gamer. I've played on just about every console from the original Atari to the Game Boy Advance to now the PlayStation 5. I'm also an intellectual property attorney with over 20 years' experience advising clients on issues related to patents, trademarks, and copyrights. I'm with the law firm of Saul, Ewing in Philadelphia, and you can find me on the PlayStation Network under gamertag EaglesFan71. With me today is my colleague Angie Cespedes. Angie and I are both members of the video gaming and esports group at the firm. Angie is also a huge gamer, and her litigation practice focuses mainly on civil matters. Angie, it's always great to be with you.
Thanks, Darius. Glad to be here.
And our special guest today is Geoffrey Frid. Geoff is a principal at the Frid Group and Compass Sports and Entertainment. Geoff, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
If you like these videos, please like and subscribe so that we can continue making them. And keep in mind that this is intended to be a general and very casual discussion of legal issues. It is not intended as actual legal advice. If you need actual legal advice, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you. So today, we're going to get right into it, Geoff. We're going to talk about your career from college athlete to executive advising athletes and entertainers. I want to give our listeners a little bit of background on you. I know you can't tell from the video, but Geoff is 7'1". He was on his high school swimming, tennis, and basketball teams. He then played college basketball for Northern Arizona, UC Berkeley, and Cal State, averaging about 8 points and 5 rebounds. And amazingly, Geoff, I could not find a stat of you ever taking a 3-point shot. You'll have to confirm or deny that later. But can you talk about your career as a college athlete and how that prepared you for what you're doing today?
Of course. We'll have to get back to that 3-point discussion. That one still stings a little bit. But as far as college athlete, I didn't take the traditional route. Matter of fact, my route was not one set in particular. It was kind of across the board. So taking it back a little bit prior to there, in high school, Darius, as you mentioned, I played tennis, I swam. My school didn't have that many kids in it, so we had 80 kids, 6th through 12th grade. We couldn't staff a basketball team, and tennis was kind of what I was passionate about. And then it got to a point where I was about to go into college, and I was like, okay, I'm finally ready. I want to play basketball. And rather than going into school that I already gotten admitted into, I reached out to a close family friend, and I had a great support system around me who was like, let me reach out to my sphere. Ended up getting connected to one person, then another person, started talking to a lot of coaches, and ended up deciding on a 5th year postgraduate year in Vegas at Impact Academy. And that's really where it started. I went from 6'10", maybe at that time, 6'11", raw, never played, organized basketball, except, back in NJB junior basketball, to, getting thrown into it with guys that were playing for the last, 15 years at that point. Couldn't dunk a basketball. Still remember, hearing it from all the teammates, but ended up through there doing pretty well, getting a lot of looks, and had, an amazing staff there that helped me kind of understand and navigate. Ended up taking a scholarship and then ended up at Berkeley.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that really is an amazing journey. It reminds me of Joel Embiid, right? He didn't. He started at 14. He was playing soccer, you
Yeah.
know, and but he had, you know, he had this body for basketball. So, um, yeah. Angie.
Yeah. So Geoff, I think it goes without saying that the connections we make as we're coming up are pretty much, everything, especially given what you do, what we do. So I'm curious. I'm guessing you developed a lot of connections in the sports world based on your career as a college athlete and thereafter. Can you talk a little bit about how you first started making those connections? How did it start? When did you realize how important it was?
They say, your network is your net worth. And I think a lot of people just use those as words rather than conceptualizing it. Whereas it's very, very much the way that life goes. One connection, one party that's pushing you in the right direction could make or break, the next step in your career, which, if you look at it, is essentially getting you to where you want to be. Um, Early on, I knew I was a little bit different in the sense of I kept to myself. Growing up, raised by a single mother, I always played sports, but my family didn't really understand sports. So I was kind of the lone man out. And at that point, I was, tall. I was taller than everyone in my class. So it wasn't even the fact that I was just raised by someone who didn't understand sports, but it's then being that height and being different in the way that life is, and not adapting to people that are, 7 feet tall. It kind of made me very much so an introvert, uh, to which I'm still consider myself an introvert with extrovert capabilities. Um, but the relationships kind of were always organic, and that's very similar to kind of how I conduct my business now. Um, in the sense that I don't market, I don't advertise, haven't started, a TikTok or a podcast that a lot of people in my industry do. Um, Not because I don't think it's beneficial, but because, it's not kind of who I am and what I know I'm great at, even though I love educating. So relationships always came very kind of organically through time. And funny enough, how I got into it, the first relationship I was introduced to was through a very close family friend, who connected me with her brother, who ran Barry's Tickets, which was a big ticketing service here on the West Side, and West Coast nationally as well. Um, and he had connected me with this childhood friend who was then coaching at Columbia, and then this, and then that's when my, basketball kind of spark started flying. Funny enough, bringing it full circle, I play pickleball with him now. Uh, and the first time I played with him a few months back, I'm like, wow, I don't know if he knows. So I kind of went through the whole story with him, and it was funny, full circle. But, to get back to the connections and networking, it is very important. It's key. It's gotten me to where I'm at right now. But I think everyone kind of excels in their own specific way, that you can't take a cookie cutter approach. And there's going to be people that resonate well with me that might not with others. Um, but yes, relationships are everything. I've been blessed to have amazing mentors around me from all walks of life, from the venture capital side, uh, to founders of companies, to sports figures and their circles. So I kind of have seen it all come throughout life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find that a lot of people that are very good at making connections and establishing relationships with a lot of people are introverted and extroverted. I'm a trial attorney, I'm a litigator. Most people just assume that I'm super outspoken. I was super shy as a kid. And I can, kind of work a room and be in court like it's nobody's business. But then also, I can just be quiet as well and just, stick to myself. And I think that's a quality that I've recognized in a lot of people who have large networks, both of friends and of business associates as well. I was laughing when you were talking about being 7 feet tall. I always joke around. I'm Cuban American, and I always say I'm tall for a Latin chick, but I'm only 5'6". So on that front, I don't know if I can commiserate, but I absolutely get it.
Yeah, and I love, when you talk about being authentic to who you are, Geoff, because that's something I've always believed in as well. Like, people, when I was, first starting out in the law, a lot of people said, oh, well, you got to join a country club. You got to play golf to really meet clients and people, because that's what lawyers do. And, I would always kind of say, well, that's not what I do. I like video games and I like other things. And I tried to really stay authentic to those things. And I think the connections that I have are stronger because of that. Maybe, you can make connections by pretending a little bit, but I don't think that's the way that you make really strong connections. And I think that's a point that that you're bringing out right there too. So
On the front of like relationships, me being from the inside circle, so to speak, being that athlete, seeing it firsthand, and seeing some of my friends kind of curate their groups, you can kind of spot out the iffiness pretty quickly.
yeah,
So I think that's one of those things that, being in LA right now, it is a lot of smoke and mirrors. But when you get deeper into it, you can kind of understand who really has good intentions. I mean, you can get a pretty good signal on that.
Angie, did you want to say something else about that?
Oh, I was just going to joke around about golf, that I've discovered that the secret to golf is just having, really cute golf outfits and really cool golf shoes. Then you can just kind of fake the rest. But
Definitely. So Geoff, let me ask you about what you do is right now is the main part of your business. It's real estate, and it's working with a lot of sports figures and celebrities in finding them that right place to live in. And sometimes it's because a player has been traded from one place to another, and they don't necessarily know where to start looking for a new house. So can you talk a little bit about your real estate practice and and how that's going?
Real estate is, in a sense, or what has been, a used car salesman type of business, which is unfortunate in my eyes because I studied business and finance in college. And so my backstory is understanding the numbers and analytics of real estate, and also looking back at creating wealth, which is what I try to instill now with clients and those around me. Real estate's been a lot of people's number one asset and the way that they've established wealth. You look at the top 100 richest families, family offices, individuals, a lot of their wealth was created through real estate acquisition, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial. So I took the approach of, why not be kind of the caretaker to that number one asset on the residential side? And a different take to it too was, I was first generation born here in LA. My mom immigrated, my dad immigrated, grandmother. So having a roof over our heads was, in my head, a very big, idea and concept, and a safety net, if you will. So real estate was always in my blood. I was 4, 5, 6 years old, calling open houses, scheduling appointments. My mom would get calls about like, hey, you guys haven't shown up yet for your showing. And she'd be confused. And I'd be up all night running numbers and trying to figure out which neighborhoods, were selling quicker. And it was always kind of something ingrained in me. Fast forward in college, I started a shoe business freshman year, and was able to save up some money, put myself through school. We didn't have NIL deals back then. We only had our stipends, even on scholarship. So saved enough money to buy a rental property in Arizona, because I saw the kind of the rental demographic and breakdown, homes, what they were trading for versus what they were renting for. And it was a college town. It was actually in Flagstaff, and ended up buying a property, renting it out. A year or two later, doing the same thing. In the meantime, kind of dealing with some renovation flips. Fast forward, really still love the concept of real estate and being able to buy, sell, invest, trade up. So I said, I'm just going to do it for those around me. And then at that point, I was heavily into the sports world. I was playing. I was signed with an agency, and I'm like, I want to really take it and run with it. And I knew when I was done playing, I was going to get into the real estate space. So as a broker, so I have my broker's license, but I have my team under Compass's umbrella. I'm also part of Compass's sports and entertainment division, which is across the nation. So my approach really is a white glove hand holding type of service, and more about connecting than the typical, like, we're just transacting every day. But yeah, that's kind of how it came to be.
So, Geoff, not only have you played basketball in the US, but also overseas. So I'm curious if that, kind of shaped your perspective, seeing athletes, dealing with their managers, with their agents, with other athletes, with their families, things of that nature. I think a lot of people assume that all of these athletes, make a ton of money and have money to spare and are, have a game plan for what to do. God forbid they can no longer play anymore, things of that nature. I mean, were those the kinds of things that you saw that kind of shaped what it was that you're doing now, what it is you're doing now?
100%. Most people, another reason I got into it is players would get taken advantage of. So you look at it from a perspective of, oh, it's an NBA athlete, NFL, overseas athlete. He's making so much money, which in a lot of cases it's true. But let's compare, an NBA athlete who makes 4 or 5 million a year, great income, half of that to taxes. Then he's got family to support. Then he's got friends in his circle. Then he's got his business manager, his attorney. So when you get down to it, and taking into account the lifespan, if you will, of an athlete, their playing career, you're trying to create a wealth that would support you for the next 40, 50 years within a 5-10 year span. And then overseas, you take that a different level. The salary is not as much as what it is in the NBA. Typically, you'll get some guys who are getting a couple million a year. And then, you have guys, locals there that are getting 50, 60,000 a year, that have second and third jobs. So it really is kind of a wide array, but I saw kind of the circles that were being formed. And I was like, regardless of the player's skill level, how much they were making, I just wanted to kind of be a support system, because I've seen friends of mine that have come through the ranks that have played in the NBA, then gone overseas, or they've gone from G League to the NBA, and kind of those that stay overseas because they love the life. So it's, I wouldn't say I'm an exclusive of any sort of leagues, but I'm just passionate about sports and helping guys get situated the right way.
That's great.
So we have to talk about video games a little bit, Geoff, since that's one of the themes of the podcast. So tell me a little bit about, what some of your favorite games of all time are, and maybe some games that you're playing today that you love.
How much time do we have?
All the time you want.
Oof. I mean, first system ever. I'm trying to think if it was a Nintendo 64 or a PlayStation 1. I remember, 007 on the Nintendo 64. I remember Super Smash Bros. Like all the games that as kids I would play. Again, I fiend for, holidays came around, I would fiend for like a new game.
Yeah.
I don't recall what it was. I think we had GameStop back then.
Yeah.
And, we'd go in, we'd buy the games that were not $60 back then, trade up or trade in other games, get pennies, compared to what we've spent on them. And then, yeah, so I mean, growing through the ranks, PlayStation, I remember Tekken, um, some of the Mortal Kombat, probably games that I shouldn't have been playing, but it was all in fun. Um, Compared to nowadays, I still play a lot. Unfortunately, I don't have as much time as I did as a kid, especially in the summertime,
Yeah.
thinking back to it now. My cousin came out from LA, so I lived in San Diego with my mom for a few years, and I remember he came out for a whole summer just so we could play video games. He brought his Xbox, I had my PlayStation. We would set up on two TVs and just play all summer. Order the same carne asada fries from my favorite shop out and just play day in, day out. Um, Nowadays, obviously, NBA 2K, that's a staple, especially, from the playing days. It's something you do all day, every day to kind of connect with your teammates and friends. I've been through like the Fortnite phase, and nowadays it's a lot of Call of Duty.
Mhm.
Um, I play some FIFA. I'm not as good. And then I might get, some hate for it, but I'm waiting on the new Grand Theft Auto to come out.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk about gameplay and story, especially on GTA 5 that came out, whatever it was, 10 years or so now,
Yeah.
one of the, amazing story, quality of the graphics, story, like it's mind boggling.
Yeah, it's my son's favorite game. And I think a lot of people may not realize this, but in my interactions, at least with, I represent a lot of teams and leagues and federations, both here in the US and outside. And in my interaction with athletes, the majority of the athletes I at least, come into contact with are huge gamers. As busy as you all are and as much as you train, there's also a lot of downtime when you're traveling.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you found that to be the same, but I mean, it's a massive, massive, gaming community. I think the athlete community.
Yeah. I remember travel days, we'd have the little portable screens that we would take with us. Not everyone, but like one or two guys had it. Then we'd wait to get back to the hotel and we'd all congregate into one room and, have it up on the big screen and, player by player, whoever wins would stay on, loser would get on. A lot of trash talking, um, a lot of fun, just a good time in general. I think games get a negative connotation because you tend to stay indoors, um, but I think when you kind of pair it with physical activity and having a balance with whatever else it is, family life, it's something that brings entertainment and joy, but also connectivity. And I think we're seeing it now more than ever, with streamers, with influencers, with all this, that a lot of gaming is going on.
Yeah, I mean it's been widely publicized, but I mean it's bigger than the entertainment industry now. Netflix has said their biggest competition are video game consoles. It's a piece of the fabric of the entertainment that connects us all. Like when I was younger, it was just really television, right? That was the one thing that you had to connect you to other people. But now you have so many different streaming services and social media, and video games are a big part of that too. So. Angie, do you want to hit Geoff with one more question before we
Um,
wrap it up?
Absolutely. So I'm curious because you seem to have your finger on the pulse of a lot of what's going on, both in the real estate industry and in the sports arena. Anything interesting? Anything coming up next? Anything fun and exciting you're looking into? You're working on? Any trends you see you want to share with us? I'd love it if you'd hit us with a little with a little insight on any of that.
Hmm. So with NIL being really prevalent, what that's going to lead to is a lot of money. We've already seen a lot of money for younger players, which means a lot more wealth is being created, younger guys, younger generations. Same thing with gaming. You have guys that are playing 8-10 hours that was esports and teams that would go out and compete that now are streaming, that are getting millions of dollars. I think that's going to continue to kind of push the transfer of wealth from generation to generation at a rapid pace. And I think in the next 5-6 years, it's going to be a lot more prevalent. So I'd say if you don't follow up with, sport or gaming, to kind of make sure you keep a pulse on it, because the way we did business and the way that we lived life will be changing. And we've been seeing that with AI. So I'd say it doesn't have to be like a full on in-depth jumping in, but an education and understanding of wealth, where it's coming from, what streamers are. I think a basic understanding of that is very key, but excited to be pushing out a lot more things in the coming years. And just excited to see where the next step is with NIL and sports and go from there.
Yeah, no, it's been kind of fascinating watching the Olympics.
Yeah.
I don't really remember it at this level based on what we've seen, but there are, athletes who have gone into this and have been relatively unknown. And now they've just got massive, massive followings. And I've got to imagine that they're probably going to need your services.
I agree. I prepared a question because I want to hear it from a different perspective of games and sports, but favorite game of all time from each one of you, but also on the flip side, one game, current, like modern era game that you would take with you to play for the next 5-10 years.
Oh gosh. All right, Darius, you go first.
Go first. Favorite game of all time. That is a really tough one to pick, but I'll go with The Witcher because he's behind me, watching over me. And if I had to take one game that would kind of keep me entertained on the proverbial deserted island, it would probably be NBA 2K. I think that's the one I've played the most over my lifetime. So yeah. And what do you think,
All right,
Angie?
I'm going to go completely old school here, only because I recently had a chance to play it on an old system, and it reminded me of how much I loved it and how many hours I spent playing it as a kid. But I was obsessed, don't laugh at me, with Frogger. I mean, absolutely, completely obsessed. And I got to play it the other day, and I won't tell you how long I played because it was, a long time, but it was so cool to revisit that and just remember what it was like being a little kid and that coming out and my dad bringing it home and being all excited about it. So.
Good one. And I think NIL is a great thing to end on. Coincidentally, the first episode of the podcast that Angie and I ever did, or that we ever did as a firm, was about the Supreme Court decision that basically paved the way for NIL. And that was 4 years ago. And, the expansion of things that we've seen since then, including the release of College Football 25, which was not possible, prior to that Supreme Court decision. It's really been amazing. So I think
makes me think if I had just pushed back college about 10 years or so,
right,
we could have seen happen.
Right, you could have been in NCAA basketball.
I know.
There you go.
Well, if anyone has any questions about any of the topics we discussed today, please drop them into the comments and we'll do our best to answer them for you without providing any real legal advice, of course. I want to say thank you to my partner, Angie de Cespedes, and thank you to Geoffrey Frid from the Frid Group and Compass Sports and Entertainment for coming on today. Thank you, Geoff.
Of course, thank you both for having me, and I could do it for 2 more hours.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Trust me, I could talk for another 2 hours as well.
We'll do it again sometime soon. Until next time, this is Darius Gambino for myself and Angie de Cespedes. We'll see you next time on Lawyers with Game.